3 days passed as the Corlethian fleet slowly moved away from Earth. The team remained at the underground facility, monitoring every movement and communication. "They're really leaving," Eric said, watching the main display as the alien ships moved beyond Mars orbit. Science Officer Krasnul, now acting fleet commander, had opened limited communication with Earth. His first message was formal but clear. Earth was now classified as a protected world. No Xorlathian ship would enter this solar system again. The president called a special meeting with Colonel Harris and her team at the White House. They gathered in the Situation Room, where world leaders joined by secure video. "The human race owes you all a debt we can never repay," the president said. "You've saved our planet without firing a single shot." The Russian president spoke next. "The question now is, what do we do with this knowledge? Do we tell the world what happened?" Heated debate followed. Some leaders wanted full disclosure to the public. Others feared panic or chaos if people learned how close Earth had come to alien conquest. "There's something else to consider," Samantha said when asked for her opinion. "The Xorlathians aren't the only species out there. If we broadcast what happened, others might hear it too." Colonel Harris nodded. "Lieutenant Wright makes an excellent point. We fooled the Xorlathians by pretending to be connected to the aberration. But what if the aberration is real? What if there are other alien civilizations watching us?" In the end, they decided on a middle path. A special international agency would be formed to monitor for other alien threats and develop defensive strategies. The public would be told only that scientists had detected signals from deep space, prompting new investment in space defense. 1 week later, Samantha and Eric stood on the roof of the Pentagon, looking up at the night sky. "Hard to believe it's over," Eric said. 2 weeks ago, I was just a normal cryptographer planning my weekend." Samantha smiled. "And I was just a Navy lieutenant complaining about night shifts." She paused. "Colonel Harris offered me a position heading the new agency. The Xenocultural Intelligence Division. I got the same offer." "Are you going to take it?" Eric nodded. "How could I pass that up? Besides, someone needs to keep studying those Xorlathian messages. There's so much we still don't know. Like whether the aberration actually exists," Samantha added. The next day, they met with elder historian Trasbor, who had stayed behind as the Xorlathian ambassador. The ancient alien sat across from them in a specially designed chair, his scaled skin reflecting the overhead lights. "Your deception was impressive," Trasbor said, his words translated by a computer, "worthy of the aberration themselves." "Was it entirely a deception?" Samantha asked carefully. "The aberration seems very real to your people." Trasbor's inner eyelids blinked slowly. "They were real. A species that defeated us without weapons, using only ideas and images that changed how we thought, much like you did." "What happened to them?" Eric asked. "They disappeared. Some say they evolved beyond physical form. Others believe they still watch over the galaxy, protecting creative species like yourselves." The elder historian tilted his head. "Perhaps that is why your ancient myths contain so many similarities to our records of the aberration." After the meeting, Samantha and Eric walked through the halls of the new Xenocultural Intelligence Division headquarters. "Do you think it's possible," Samantha asked, "that the aberration really did visit Earth in the past?" Eric considered this. "I don't know, but it's interesting that every human culture has myths about godlike beings from the stars." He grinned. "Maybe we should look into that." Their new office was filled with screens showing star maps and intercepted alien transmissions. On the wall hung a framed message, the first communication they had decoded from the Xorlathian fleet. As Earth continued its journey around the sun, a small beacon floated at the edge of the solar system. Placed there by the Xorlathians, it broadcast a simple warning to any passing ships. "Protected territory. Aberration influency. Do not approach." Tension filled the command bridge of the Xorlathian flagship as Admiral Vex Thar waited for a response from High Command. The silence stretched for nearly an hour, unusual for the normally efficient Corlathian leadership. Communications officer, check the signal integrity. Vexthar ordered, his patience wearing thin. Signal is clear, Admiral. They are receiving our transmission. Science officer Krasnol approached carefully. Admiral, the delay itself is significant. High Command must be consulting the ancient records. Elder historian Trasbord nodded slowly. The records are kept in deep storage, only accessed in times of great crisis. Vexthar paced the bridge, all four arms clasped behind his back. His career, his reputation, everything rested on this conquest. To retreat based on ancient superstitions would make him a laughingstock. Prepare a small attack group, he suddenly ordered. 3 ships only. Target their largest military installation. Captain Moxrel stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, we should wait for High Command's response. I am still in command here, Vexthar hissed. Prepare the attack group. On Earth, the team continued to monitor Xorlathian communications. Eric noticed a change in pattern. 3 ships are breaking formation, he reported. They're moving toward Earth. Colonel Harris immediately picked up the secure phone. Get me the Joint Chiefs. We may have incoming hostiles. Samantha studied the data coming in. Wait, look at the communications between the ships. There's disagreement. The other ships are ordering these 3 to return to formation. Dr. Grant nodded as he translated. She's right. It looks like Admiral Vexthar ordered this without approval. Many of his officers are protesting. Can we target those 3 ships specifically with our broadcast? Colonel Harris asked. Already on it, Eric said, fingers flying over his keyboard. The team quickly assembled their most powerful message yet. They included images of ancient artifacts that resembled Xorlathian symbols, implying that the aberration had visited Earth repeatedly. They added recordings of Earth's most emotionally impactful music and poetry, knowing it would disturb the Xorlathian crew. Most importantly, they included details about Xorlathian biology and history that they had gleaned from intercepted communications. Details no human should know. This should convince them we have knowledge passed down from the aberration, Samantha said as they launched the broadcast directly at the 3 approaching ships. The effect was immediate. On the lead attack ship, the crew began experiencing symptoms of deep psychological distress. The Xorlathian equivalent of panic attacks spread through the lower decks. Captain, a young officer called out, the crew is refusing to man battle stations. They say the broadcasts contain forbidden knowledge. The ship's captain, loyal to Admiral Vexthar, hesitated. Then his communications console lit up with an incoming transmission, not from Earth, but from Xorlathian High Command. Back on the flagship, Admiral Vexthar received the same transmission. The holographic image of High Commander Zexfok, supreme leader of the Xorlathian Empire, appeared before him. Admiral Vexthar, the High Commander began, his tone grave, you are hereby ordered to abort the conquest of Earth immediately. Vexthar stared in disbelief. High Commander, with respect. Silence. The ancient records have been consulted. The human broadcasts contain knowledge that could only have come from the aberration. They are a protected species. The bridge fell silent. Even Vexthar could not question a direct order from High Command. Furthermore, the High Commander continued, you are relieved of command. Science Officer Krasnol will oversee the fleet's withdrawal. In the underground facility on Earth, the team watched in amazement as the 3 attack ships reversed course. They're pulling back, Eric said, his voice filled with wonder. Dr. Grant looked up from his translation work. It's more than that. High Command has ordered a full withdrawal. They've classified Earth as protected by the aberration, their highest danger classification. Colonel Harris could hardly believe it. It worked. It actually worked. Samantha and Eric exchanged looks of relief and disbelief. Their bluff had paid off. What happens now? Dr. Wells asked. Colonel Harris looked at the display showing the alien fleet. Now, we watch and make sure they actually leave. Hours passed as Earth continued to broadcast to the Corlathian fleet. In the underground facility, the team monitored alien communications anxiously. "Something's happening," Eric said, looking up from his screen. "Their communications traffic has increased by 300%. Colonel Harris leaned over his shoulder. "Can we translate it?" "Working on it," Dr. Grant replied from his station. "But the patterns suggest internal disagreement. Lots of it." Samantha studied the Corlathian ship movements on the main display. "They've stopped advancing. They're holding position at the edge of our solar system." A cheer went up around the room, but Colonel Harris raised her hand for quiet. "This isn't over yet. They haven't retreated." On the Corlathian command ship, chaos reigned. The bridge was filled with the sound of officers arguing loudly with Admiral Vexthar. "We must withdraw immediately," urged Captain Moxrell, commander of the 3rd Battle Group. "The humans show all the signs of aberration kinship." "This is merely a trick," Admiral Vexthar insisted, his skin flushed with anger. "They intercepted our communications and are using our own fears against us." Science Officer Krasnol stepped forward. "Admiral, with respect, that would itself be evidence of aberration-like intelligence. Only the aberration ever managed to decode our language without direct contact." More officers voiced their agreement. The lower decks were reporting growing unrest among the crew. Many refused to prepare the invasion pods, citing the ancient protocol exception. No conquest of aberration-like species. Admiral Vexthar slammed all 4 of his fists on the command table. "I will not retreat based on superstition and children's stories." "They are not stories," said a new voice. The officers turned to see Elder Historian Trasbor entering the bridge. The ancient Corlathian had been awakened from suspended animation, a measure only taken in the most extreme circumstances. "I lived through the Aberration War," the elder said, his voice thin but commanding. "What these humans broadcast matches our records exactly." Back on Earth, the team was encouraged by the Corlathians' hesitation. They had refined their broadcasts, targeting specific ships in the fleet. "We should focus on the lower-ranking crew," Samantha suggested. "According to the translations, they're the most superstitious about the aberration." Dr. Wells nodded in agreement. "And we should include more folklore and mythology. Our ancient stories about gods and monsters seem to particularly disturb them." Eric had an inspiration. "What if we send them our oldest stories about visitors from the stars? Every culture has them. Stories about beings who came from the sky." "That's brilliant," Dr. Wells said. "We can imply these stories are actually memories of the aberration visiting Earth." They quickly assembled a new broadcast featuring ancient cave paintings of strange visitors, Native American sky beings, Egyptian hieroglyphs of star people, and similar imagery from cultures worldwide. They added narration in the Corlathian language suggesting Earth had been visited and protected by the aberration for thousands of years. Colonel Harris received a call from the Pentagon. "Our satellites report movement in the Corlathian fleet," she told the team after hanging up. "Several ships are changing position." "Are they preparing to attack?" Samantha asked, tension evident in her voice. "Unknown, but they've moved their main weapons away from Earth-facing positions." On the Corlathian command ship, Admiral Vexthar faced open rebellion. Half of his captains had formally requested withdrawal under the protocol exception. "Admiral," Elder Historian Trasbor said quietly, "if you proceed with this invasion, you risk awakening the aberration's wrath again. Our species barely survived the first encounter." Vexthar stared at the viewscreen showing Earth, such a small blue planet, not worth the risk of another aberration war. "Send a message to High Command," he finally ordered. "Request new instructions regarding the Earth situation." Science Officer Krasnul exchanged glances with the Elder Historian. Both knew that simply asking the question would be seen as confirmation of their fears. No Corlathian admiral had ever requested clarification on the protocol before. In the underground facility on Earth, Dr. Grant suddenly straightened in his chair. They're sending a long-range communication to their home world. The team gathered around his station. What does it say? Colonel Harris asked. Dr. Grant's face broke into a smile as he translated. They're asking if Earth should be classified as under aberration protection. Samantha gripped Eric's hand tightly. It's working. The underground facility hummed with tension as the team prepared to launch Operation Aberration. Colonel Harris had recruited Dr. Lisa Wells, a renowned cultural anthropologist, to help perfect their plan. We need to target their psychological weak points, Dr. Wells explained, pointing to a diagram of Sorlathian brain structure they had compiled based on intercepted medical data. Their species evolved as perfect imitators, not creators. Creativity represents chaos to them, a threat to their orderly minds. Samantha nodded. So we give them chaos. Controlled chaos, Eric corrected. We need to convince them we're related to the aberration, not just random noise generators. Dr. Wells laid out printouts of Earth's most powerful cultural artifacts, everything from ancient cave paintings to modern abstract art, from Shakespeare's sonnets to jazz improvisation. We'll include elements from all human cultures, she said. Show them the full range of human creativity. Colonel Harris looked at the wall clock. 10 hours until their fleet is in optimal broadcast range. Let's move. On the Sorlathian fleet, Admiral Vex Star reviewed the final invasion plans with his captains. The main view screen showed Earth rotating peacefully, unaware of its impending doom. Phase 3 of the protocol begins in 10 hours, he announced. Prepare the Conquest ships. Science Officer Kraz Knoll stood silently in the corner, his datapad clutched tightly. He had been ordered to cease his warnings about the aberration similarities, but his concerns had spread among the lower-ranking crew members. Back on Earth, the team worked frantically. They had converted their findings into a series of broadcasts designed to mimic the psychological warfare used by the aberration centuries ago. We need to make these broadcasts seem like they're coming from multiple sources, Samantha said. Make it look like Earth is full of aberration descendants. Eric nodded, his fingers flying over the keyboard. I'm programming the satellite network to create the illusion of thousands of broadcast points. Dr. Wells approached them with a tablet. I selected the cultural elements most likely to trigger their fear response. Poetry that breaks conventional rules. Music that changes tempo unexpectedly. Art that defies logical interpretation. Colonel Harris joined them. The UN has authorized worldwide broadcast systems to carry our signal. Every radio telescope, satellite dish, and communications array on Earth will amplify our message. As the hours ticked by, the team finalized their plan. They had created a message that combined elements from human cultures worldwide, embedded with specific references to things only the Exorlathians would understand. Subtle nods to their history with the aberration. It's ready, Samantha said finally, looking exhausted but determined. Colonel Harris checked the tracking data. The Sorlathian fleet has entered optimal range. It's now or never. She picked up a secure phone and called the president. Operation Aberration is go. With the press of a button, Earth began broadcasting directly to the Sorlathian fleet. The message began with Earth's most haunting music, a blend of throat singing, classical requiems, and blues laments. It continued with poetry recited in multiple languages, then visual transmissions of Earth's most emotionally powerful art. Hidden within these cultural treasures were carefully crafted phrases in the Sorlathian language, suggesting Earth had been protected by the aberration for millennia. On the lead Sorlathian ship, confusion erupted as the broadcasts penetrated their communication systems. What is this? Admiral Vex Thar demanded as eerie human music filled the bridge. A communications officer looked up in alarm. Sir, the broadcasts are coming from thousands of sources across the planet. They're speaking our language. Science Officer Kraz Knoll stepped forward, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly in distress. Admiral, they know about the aberration. They're using the same patterns. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vexthar felt fear creep down his spine. Impossible. How could they know? Because they are of the aberration, Krasnul said quietly, just as I warned. The bridge fell silent as the humans' broadcast continued, seeping into the minds of the Thorlathian crew, awakening ancient genetic memories of their species' only defeat. Back on Earth, the team watched their instruments anxiously. Are they receiving our broadcast? Colonel Harris asked. Eric checked the data. Yes, and they're not jamming it. They're listening. Samantha squeezed his shoulder. Now we wait. Dr. Grant burst into the main lab, his face flushed with excitement. I found it. I know what the aberration is. Everyone gathered around his workstation, where pages of translated Thorlathian text filled the screens. The aberration wasn't a what, it was a who, Dr. Grant explained. Another species the Exorlathians tried to conquer centuries ago. What happened? Samantha asked. They lost. Dr. Grant's voice was filled with wonder. The only time the Thorlathian Empire ever failed. The species they tried to conquer didn't have better weapons or technology. They had something else. Eric leaned forward. What? Culture, art, music, stories. Dr. Grant pointed to specific translations. The aberration used these to wage psychological warfare against the Exorlathians. And it worked. Colonel Harris frowned. How does art stop an alien invasion? The Exorlathians have no creativity, Dr. Grant explained. None. They copy and adapt, but they don't create. They find it disturbing, frightening, even. Samantha's eyes widened as understanding dawned. And humans are extremely creative. Exactly, Dr. Grant said. According to these texts, they have a specific protocol. They avoid any species that shows signs of being like the aberration. So we might actually stand a chance, Eric said, hope visible on his tired face. On the Thorlathian command ship, Science Officer Krasnul stood before Admiral Vexthar, presenting his latest findings. Admiral, I must insist you review this data, Krasnul said, his posture rigid with tension. The humans' cultural patterns show an 82% similarity to the aberration. Admiral Vexthar's upper eyes narrowed. The aberration is a myth, Science Officer. With respect, Admiral, it is not. I have accessed the historical archives. There was a species that defeated us through psychological means, and humans show many of the same traits. Your concerns are noted, Vexthar said dismissively, but the invasion will proceed as planned. The fleet is already moving into position. Back on Earth, Colonel Harris called an emergency meeting with world leaders. The UN Security Council gathered in secret as she presented their findings. We have confirmed that Earth is targeted for invasion by an alien species called the Thorlathians, she said, her voice steady despite the enormity of her words. They have conquered 27 other worlds. Disbelief and shock filled the room, but Colonel Harris continued. We have also learned something that gives us hope. The Exorlathians have a weakness. They are disturbed by creativity, by art and culture. The very things that make us human. Are you suggesting we fight aliens with music and paintings? The French representative asked skeptically. Not exactly, Colonel Harris replied. But we have a plan. After the meeting, she returned to the facility. The team had been working nonstop, developing what they called Operation Aberration. The world leaders have approved the plan, she told Samantha and Eric. We're a go. Samantha nodded, her face showing both fear and determination. We've prepared the messages. If we can convince the Exorlathians that we're related to the aberration, they might withdraw rather than risk another defeat. It's a massive bluff, Eric added. But it's our best shot. The team had crafted special broadcasts in the Thorlathian language, filled with Earth's most creative and emotionally complex cultural elements. Poetry, music, stories about triumph over impossible odds. We'll beam these directly at their fleet, Samantha explained. We've included references that should trigger their cultural memory of the aberration. Colonel Harris looked at the countdown timer on the wall. Their ships will be in range in 12 hours. You have until then to perfect your messages. As the team worked frantically to finalize their plan, Samantha paused for a moment and looked at Eric. "Do you think it will work?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," he admitted, "but if there's one thing humans are good at, it's telling stories. And right now, we need to tell the best story ever, one that saves our planet." In space, the Thorlithian fleet moved steadily toward Earth, their weapons primed and invasion pods ready. But on the bridge of his command ship, Admiral Vex Thar felt an unfamiliar sensation: doubt. General Donovan arrived at Fort Meade within the hour, his face grim. He brought with him Colonel Julia Harris, who specialized in threat assessment and had clearance levels that made even Donovan look uninformed. "Show me everything," Colonel Harris said, her voice steady but intense. For the next 2 hours, Samantha and Eric walked them through their findings. The translated words now included Earth, invasion, protocol, and conquest. Colonel Harris didn't waste time with skepticism. "We need a dedicated facility and more resources. General, I'm invoking Emergency Directive 7. General Donovan's eyebrows shot up, but he nodded. "I'll make the calls." Within 12 hours, Samantha and Eric found themselves in a new underground facility with state-of-the-art equipment and a team of 20 experts in various fields. The place had no windows and no name, just a sign reading Special Projects Division on the door. "The team is yours, Lieutenant Wright," Colonel Harris said. "What do you need?" Samantha looked at the assembled experts: linguists, mathematicians, physicists, and military intelligence officers. "We need to intercept more communications," she said. "And we need to understand who these beings are and what they want. And we need to do it fast," Eric added, pointing to a decoded time reference. "Based on this, whatever they're planning starts in less than 2 months." In space, the Thorlethian scouts had completed their initial survey. Admiral Vex Thar reviewed their findings from his command ship. "Acceptable," he said, examining the data on human military capabilities. "Begin Phase 2 of the protocol." But Science Officer Krasnol was troubled. "Admiral, I found something unusual in their communication patterns. Is it relevant to the conquest?" Vex Thar asked impatiently. "I'm not certain. Their entertainment broadcasts contain references to concepts similar to the aberration." Admiral Vex Thar's skin darkened, a sign of anger in his species. "Never mention that name in my presence. Those are just stories to frighten young ones." "But Admiral..." "Enough. Begin Phase 2. Back on Earth, the team worked day and night. They had set up advanced stealth satellites to capture more alien communications. Colonel Harris secured authorization to use the country's most powerful radio telescopes for their project. 1 week into their work, Samantha made a discovery. "Look at this," she said to Eric, pointing to a new translation. "They keep mentioning something called the aberration, and they seem afraid of it." Eric frowned. "What's an aberration to alien invaders?" "I don't know, but they mention it whenever they discuss Earth's cultural broadcasts." Colonel Harris joined them. "What have you found?" Samantha explained their discovery. "It's like they're checking if we match some profile. They're especially interested in our music, art, and stories." "Strange priorities for invaders," Colonel Harris mused. "A linguist named Dr. Paul Grant called them over to his station. I've identified their naming convention. They call themselves Thorlathians, and the leader is someone called Vex Thar." "Good work," Colonel Harris said. "Now we know what to call the enemy." As the days passed, the team made more breakthroughs. They learned that Thorlathians had conquered 27 other worlds using the same methodical approach they called the Protocol of Conquest. Samantha worked late one night, reviewing new translations. Something caught her eye: a reference to Earth followed by a question mark in the Thorlathian language. She called Eric over. "Look at this." Some of them are questioning whether Earth fits their usual Conquest profile. Eric studied the translation. It's Science Officer Krasnul again. He seems to be the one raising concerns. We need to know more about this aberration, Samantha said. It might be our only advantage. Meanwhile, Earth's space agencies detected anomalous objects at the edge of the solar system, but couldn't identify them with conventional equipment. Colonel Harris called an emergency meeting. We need to move faster. Those objects matched the signatures described in the Chlorlathian communications. Their fleet is assembling. The room fell silent as everyone realized what was at stake. We have one chance, Samantha said. We need to understand what makes them hesitate. What is the aberration, and why does it frighten them? 3 days passed in a blur of coffee, takeout food, and endless lines of code. Eric's apartment was now covered in printouts of signal patterns taped to the walls. Samantha had called in sick to work, something she had never done before in her 5 years of service. I think we have something, Eric said, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. He pointed to his computer screen where a pattern of symbols had emerged from the noise. Samantha leaned in, her eyes red-rimmed but alert. Is that a language structure? Yes. Eric tapped a few keys, and the pattern shifted. It repeats here and here, but with variations, like you said. He had written a program that compared the signals to every known human language. Nothing matched, but patterns were definitely there. Too regular to be random, too complex to be simple cosmic phenomena. We need to take this to someone, Samantha said. Someone who will listen. Eric nodded. I know someone at the Pentagon. But Sam, they're going to ask where this came from. Let them ask. We have the raw data. She gathered up the most important printouts. Let's go. Meanwhile, in the cold darkness beyond Mars, 6 Sorlethian scout ships continued their silent observation. Inside one of them, Science Officer Krasnul reviewed the data with growing concern. Admiral, Krasnul said, transmitting to the main fleet still positioned at the edge of the solar system. The humans have interesting patterns of behavior. Admiral Vexthar's impatient face appeared on the screen. All prey species have patterns, Science Officer. Is there anything that threatens the protocol? Krasnul hesitated. They create things. Art, music, stories. More than any species we've encountered. Are their weapons advanced? No, Admiral. Primitive nuclear weapons. Limited space travel. Then proceed as planned. The transmission ended abruptly. Krasnul returned to the observation data, a feeling of unease growing in their mind. Something about the humans reminded them of old stories, stories they weren't supposed to remember. Back on Earth, Samantha and Eric sat across from General Frank Donovan in a small windowless room at the Pentagon. The general's face remained impassive as they explained their findings. Let me get this straight, Donovan said after they finished. You think you've detected alien communications. Lieutenant Wright, I expected better from you. Sir, please look at the data. Samantha pushed a folder across the table. These patterns cannot be explained by any known natural phenomenon. And they match nothing in our signals database, Eric added. Nothing human-made. Donovan flipped through the pages with a skeptical expression. And what exactly do you want from me? Resources, sir, Samantha said. Better equipment. A team to help decode these signals. If there's even a small chance we're right, then we're facing a threat unlike anything in human history. Donovan finished for her. He closed the folder. I'll give you 3 days and limited access to the quantum computing lab at Fort Meade. That's it. If you find nothing conclusive, Lieutenant Wright, expect reassignment to a weather station in Greenland. Samantha straightened her back. Thank you, sir. As they left the Pentagon, Eric typed furiously on his phone. I'm calling in favors from every coder I know. We have 72 hours to prove aliens exist. At Fort Meade, they were given a small room with outdated computers and one terminal linked to the quantum system. They worked around the clock, feeding the signals into advanced AI translation algorithms. On the second day, at 3:42 a.m., the computer beeped. A single word had been translated with 89% confidence. Eric stared at the screen, the blood draining from his face. Sam. She looked over his shoulder and gasped. There on the screen was a word they recognized, though it was spelled strangely. ERTA. And next to it, another partially translated word. AMV. Huian. Invasion, Samantha whispered. They're talking about invading Earth. Eric was already reaching for the phone to call General Donovan. We need to wake him up. Now. As they waited for the call to connect, neither of them noticed a new signal coming in, one that mentioned something called the Protocol of Conquest. The stars looked the same as always through the viewports of Admiral Vexthar's command ship. He stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, his scaled skin reflecting the glow of the tactical displays around him. The star map showed a small blue-green planet in the third orbit of an unremarkable yellow star. Earth, Vexthar said, the word sounding harsh in his native tongue. Our next conquest. The intelligence officer beside him nodded, her head crest flattening in respect. The humans have nuclear capabilities, but nothing that can reach beyond their moon. They fight among themselves constantly. Our simulations predict total surrender within 14 standard days. Vexthar made a clicking sound that passed for laughter among his kind. 27 star systems had fallen to the Sorlathian Empire. Earth would be the 28th. Begin the protocol of conquest, he ordered. Send the scout ships. 12 light minutes away, Lieutenant Samantha Wright yawned and rubbed her eyes. The night shift at the Deep Space Listening Array in northern Alaska was always quiet. Too quiet. She sipped her coffee and checked the readings again. There it was, the same strange pattern she'd noticed 3 nights ago. Not random cosmic noise, not a pulsar, something else. She picked up her phone and called her supervisor. Commander Peters, came the groggy answer. Sir, it's right. I'm picking up that signal again. A long sigh came through the phone. Lieutenant, we've been over this. The equipment needs calibration. Put in a maintenance request and go back to watching for Russian satellites. With all due respect, sir, I don't think this is an equipment issue. The pattern repeats, but with variations, like a language. At 3 in the morning, everything looks like a language. Commander Alan Peters said, I'll look at your findings tomorrow. The line went dead. Samantha stared at her phone for a moment, then set it down with a frustrated sigh. Fine, she muttered. I'll prove it myself. She began recording the signals, running them through every analysis program available. By the end of her shift, she had a data file that was too strange to ignore. Instead of going home, she drove to the small apartment of her friend Eric Mason. Eric opened the door in sweatpants and a faded NASA t-shirt, his curly hair sticking up in all directions. Sam, it's 8 a.m. on a Saturday. She held up a flash drive. I need your help. This is important. Eric was the best cryptographer she knew. They had studied together at MIT before taking different career paths. She to the Navy, he to the National Security Agency. You look like you haven't slept, he said, letting her in. I haven't. She headed straight for his computer. Listen to this. She played the recording. To an untrained ear, it was just static and strange tones. But Eric's eyes widened. That's not natural, he said after a minute. Exactly. Samantha leaned forward eagerly. What do you think? Eric ran a hand through his messy hair. I think I need coffee before I can think about this. But he was already pulling his keyboard closer. While Samantha explained her discovery, neither of them knew that the first Forlathian scout ships were already passing Neptune, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them invisible to Earth's primitive detection systems. The ships moved silently, capturing data about military installations, population centers, and communication networks. Everything was proceeding according to the protocol of conquest. The same protocol that had worked flawlessly on 27 other worlds. Back in Eric's apartment, lines of code filled his computer screen as he wrote algorithms to analyze the strange signals. "If this is a language," he said, "it's unlike anything humans have created." Samantha watched over his shoulder, her exhaustion forgotten. What if it's not created by humans? Eric's fingers paused over the keyboard. He turned to look at her. "Are you suggesting?" She nodded slowly. "I know how it sounds. But what else could it be?" Eric turned back to the screen, typing faster now. "Let's find out." As the day turned to evening, the friends worked tirelessly, unaware that their discovery might be the only thing standing between Earth and total domination by a merciless alien empire.